What's up, everyone? Welcome to another episode of Power Platform TV. Today, we're going to take a look at JWT, or JSON Web Tokens, and how they can be used with Power Apps portals. So if you haven't used JWT before, or if you're not familiar with it, let's just kind of talk really briefly about what it is and how it's used. And so JWT is an open standard, and it's basically a compact URL-safe way to represent claims between two parties, right? So what does that mean? It means basically if you have one system and you have another system, JWT is a way to communicate with the two systems, and without actually going through the authentication process, JWT tokens can be exchanged that can show that both systems trust each other in an authorized way. So I wrote a blog post about this on how to use these JWT tokens with Power Apps portals, and this will all start to make sense once we build out this basically a proof of concept of how to exchange this information between the portal and a third-party web API. So that's what we're going to go through. So our starting point is going to be the Power Apps portal. So I have a Power Apps portal here, and you can see that I'm already signed into the portal. And with JWT and Power Apps portals, there's a few different endpoints that are relevant to what we're trying to do here. So the first one that we're going to look at is the token endpoint. So there's two ways to get to this token endpoint, and let's look at each of them. The first way is through the URL. So if I just were to go up to my URL here and type in this endpoint, it's going to give me back the token. Okay, so let's have a look at this. So if I go to /services _services and then /, and then I'm going to go to auth/token. Okay, so if I hit this endpoint here, we'll see what happens is the browser is basically going to download this token file. And here it is here. And if I just go and open this file, we can see here that this is actually the JWT token. Okay, so I can go and copy this and basically take a look at what it looks like. And I'm just going to leave it like that for now because I'm going to show you the second way to generate the token, and then we'll use that one. And it's going to basically be something that's the same thing. So the second way to create the token is to go into the console here, and I'm just going to clear this out. This is an old one. This code here is basically doing a get and hitting that same endpoint, and then it's going to return the token here. Okay, so this is just another simple way to get the token. So if I run this, we'll see here that this token is returned, and this is basically the same as what we saw with the downloaded text file. Okay, so now the interesting thing here about these tokens is that we can grab them. So I'm just going to go and copy this, and then I'm going to go over here to this website, jwt.io. And if we go down here, this website basically allows you to paste in tokens and take a look at them and see what they look like. And you can see here, this is already just kind of like a sample one. And basically what we have here is we have three sections which make up a JWT token. And the first part of it here is the header. And the header actually specifies the algorithm that's used for the signing. And you can see here, this particular sample has the HS256 algorithm. And that's specified in the header. And then the payload here specifies claims. So these claims are basically fields or attributes that the token is basically saying it that the user has rights to. Okay, so in this case here, it's saying that there is a attribute on this payload called name, and the name is John Doe, and that is basically a claim. Okay, now the third part to this picture here is the signature. And the signature basically, what we do is we take these two pieces here, the header and the payload, and we base64 URL encode them, and then we basically create a signature off that, and then the signature gets put here into this token. Okay, so back over here on the left, if we take a look at this token, we can see the top part here. This part's actually the header, right? So this is a base64 URL encoded header. And then we have this dot or period here, and that separates the header between the payload. So now we have the payload here in the pink color, and then we have another dot or period, and then we have the signature here at the end. Okay, so these are the three pieces here on the left that are encoded, and then we have the decoded, more easy to read, obviously, interpretation here on the right. So what we can do is I'm just going to basically just delete this sample one here and just paste in this one from the Power Apps portal. And we can see here that this website's basically taken what I've provided and it's decoded it so it knows what's actually being passed in here. And then if we scroll down, it's decoded the payload. So it's basically giving all this information here. And these are the claims that are coming from Power Apps portals out of the box, right? So there's nothing, we can't really change these. We can't really add to them, at least not at this point in time. Maybe in some future release they'll allow something like that. But as far as I know, this is kind of set in stone, and this is what's being generated as part of the token, okay? And there is some useful information in here. You can see that it's passing my first name, my family name, my email address, and if we scroll down, some other information may or not get passed along. You know, there's certain things that I'm not necessarily providing to the portal for my user, so maybe some of these aren't necessarily being passed along. Okay, so but some information's being passed through there, and then the final part of this is the signature, and then you can see here that it actually says invalid signature, and it's basically trying to it basically doesn't have a public key that it can go and use to verify this signature, right? So we're going to take a look at that part now. So if we head back over to the Power Apps portal here, and now let's head over to this underscore services /auth /public key URL. So if I go here, we'll see here, let me just get rid of the developer console. We see here that this is actually the public key, okay? So this URL anyone can hit. It's a public key that's used to verify our tokens, okay? So what we can do here is let's go ahead and copy this, and let's go back over to the JWT.io website, and it says here public key that we can paste in here, right? So if I were to type in anything here, we don't get we still see the signature is not verified, right? But what I'm going to do, I'm going to paste in the public key here, and now you can see that the signature is actually verified. So this is a correct public key, and if I were to go ahead and like delete one of these letters here or add a different letter, it's not going to recognize the signature, and so that's how we know that this is valid, and this can be used for basically verifying that the token is authentic. So now we know that the Power Apps portals are capable of creating these JWT tokens that can be used for authentication. Now let's take a look at how they can actually be used. Okay, so if we hop back over to my blog here, and let's go and scroll down, and I'll show you there is a sample project here that Microsoft has provided, and here's the GitHub link. So I'm going to click on this, and it's going to take us over here. So this is the external web API consuming portal OAuth token sample. Okay, so what you can do is go ahead and download these. This is what I have already done. You can basically come over here and clone this project, download it, and then open it up, and it's going to open in Visual Studio. And let's go ahead and take a look at what that looks like. And there's some things that you will need to do as soon as you open this in order to get this to work, okay? There was some tweaks that I had to make, and I think this project's been out there in GitHub for a while, so there's probably some NuGet packages that you can choose to update, and there's probably a more modern way of doing this, but the idea here is that this basic code works, and you'll get the idea of how this can be used if you needed to build this single sign-on authentication with a third-party system, right? And if we just take a quick step back to look at the overall objective here, so what we're trying to do is when a user logs into the Power Apps portal, they've already gone through the process of providing their username and password, or however means of authenticating they have they need to sign into the portal. And once they're signed in, they're authorized. They're an authorized user, right? So if you then wanted to integrate with another third-party system, such as a web API, and you have the source of the API in this situation, and you just want to basically hit the API in an authenticated way without having to provide your username and password again, what you can do is basically have this set up so that you don't need to do that, and the receiving API will know that you're trusted, and it'll send back any data that you are allowed to receive. Okay, so that's the big picture of what we're trying to achieve here. So if we go and jump into the web config file here, there is this key section here, and this is the URL of the Power Apps portal. Okay, so when you download this, it'll look a little bit different, and you'll just need to go ahead and set this to your URL of the Power Apps portal. Then the second part of this is in the startup CS file. Okay. And you can see here, this is under app_start folder. It's a startup CS file. And if we scroll a little bit, and so the two interesting things here is the validate audience and the valid audience. Okay, so the validate audience, this is set to true when you open up this project, and I have it set to false here. Basically, if you have it set to true, it's going to look for a client ID. And we'll talk about client IDs in a little bit, but at this point in time, we're just going to keep that set to false, and we're going to have this as blank here, okay? So we'll come back in a little bit and talk about using client IDs and how to use them, but for the first round here, no client ID, set that to false, okay? And if we take a look at how this code works, basically what's happening is, if we just go up a little bit here, this function is used to validate the identity of the person making this request. And so the way this is done is it basically receives the authorization. So it looks in the authorization of the request, and in the authorization we are passing as a bearer token the JWT token. Okay, and we're gonna pass this request shortly. So once it receives this request, it's going to look for the authorization. It'll get the token from there, and then it will go here, and it's going to use the public key that we saw to verify that the token is valid. Okay, so here's the signing key down here, and if we scroll down a little bit, we can see here this is the loading of the signing key, and then we basically go off and get the public key, and then we have some code here that basically sets the signing key, and then this is all used up here to verify that everything that's been provided in the token matches with the public key, and this is a untampered authorized request that's coming through. And then from there you can take a look at the claims, and basically, you know, the claim may have a role in there or something, and then so you're authenticated at that point, and the web API knows to send back any data that is requested based on any claims that are provided. So let's see what happens if I just go ahead and run this. So I'm just going to go ahead here and run it. And we'll see this open in a web browser. And you can change the default port if you want to, but that's the one that it's currently set to. And the first page, all it does is basically hit that public key URL. And so we know that we're able to read it, and it just goes ahead and displays that here. Okay, so the code's all ready to be tested. So now let's go ahead and open up Postman, and we're going to send through a request and see what happens. So here's Postman, and what I have here is I have the local URL that I just opened, and I have this path here to a who am I request. Okay, so this is a request that's already in the web API code. the code's already there, and we can basically hit this and run it. Now, if I were to, you can see here I'm not passing in any authentication at this point in time, right? Any authorization, actually. So if I go ahead and hit send, we're going to get back here, authorization has been denied for this request. So at this point, this is where we want to provide the JWT token. So under headers here, I'm just going to click on here, and this is authorization, the key. So I'm going to provide the authorization key here. And then here's where I can provide the bearer JWT token. So I'm going to go back over to Power Apps Portals now. And let me just go ahead and run the token again. I'm going to copy this token. So make sure I get all of it there. So I've copied it, and now I'm going to head back over to Postman. And I'm going to paste it in here with the word bearer space in front of it. Okay, so bearer space token, and now I'm going to hit send. And what's happening is you can see it's hitting Visual Studio, and it's coming in here. It's doing the who am I, and it's basically hitting this error here, right? So there was a couple of errors with the out-of-the-box code that I found, and we're just going to go ahead and fix this up here so we can see what this is meant to look like. So I'm going to click close here, stop basically, and I'm going to get rid of the list here. Let's just go ahead and delete this and get rid of this one as well. Okay, so that should take care of that line. And now if we just kind of scroll to the right, we see that we've got this here as well. And I'm just going to change this. Let's get rid of this. And so it's like this. Okay, get rid of this one as well. Okay, so that looks good. Let's just go ahead and rebuild this. Make sure it builds. Okay, that succeeded. I'm going to go ahead and run this again. Okay, we're up and running again. So now let's go back to Postman, and I'm going to hit send. And there we go, right? So we're getting data back from our web API. So it's basically used this bearer token, and it's gone through and done its authorizing, right? It's taken a look at the token. It's taken a look at the public key. It's making sure that everything looks good in the code. And then it's basically said, okay, my user's authorized. I can return back any web API data that's appropriate. And that's what we're seeing here now, right? So if for some reason the token was incorrect, like if I change this token and hit send, we see that it's unauthorized, right? So that's basically the JWT working. And let's talk real quick about client IDs and how they can be used. So I'm going to go over to the portal management app now. And there's 3 site settings that I'm going to create. So I'm going to click on site settings and click on new. And the first one that I'm going to create is this one here. So it's connector implicit grant flow enabled. And I'm going to select my site. And I'm going to set this to true. Okay. So I'm going to save this one. This is the first setting. So now let's go ahead and create a new setting. And we can set the client ID. So I'm going to do implicit grant flow / registered client ID. And if I basically select the website, and I can set the value here of the client ID. Okay, so this is the one that if there's going to be any token generation happening, it will need this exact client ID passed along with it. Otherwise, the token will be invalid. So I'm just going to call this my client ID. Okay. So it looks like that, and I'm going to go ahead and click save. And now let's just do one more setting here. I'm going to click on new, and this one's going to be for the redirect URI. And so the key here is basically implicit grant flow, and then my client ID, which is the one that was just created, and then the redirect URI. Okay, so select my website again, and the redirect URI is going to be basically localhost 60717, like that. Go ahead and save. And I have the 3 keys set up here. Next thing is to update the portal cache. So I'm just going to sync up the config here. So back here in Visual Studio, what we can do is basically set this now to validate audience equals true. Okay, so if we set this to true, this here is where we want to provide our client ID. So on the Power Apps portal side, we called it my client ID. So it's going to be exactly like that. And that's all we have to do. Okay, so we can run this now, and now it's going to use these two settings to validate the client ID. And the other thing we need to do is to now generate a token, and I'm just going to clear this. And if we basically look at the previous way we generated the token, what we can do now is do a question mark client underscore ID is equal to my client ID. Okay, so if we go ahead and run it like this, and actually you can see here that I misspelled my client ID and we're getting this bad request back. So if I go and do this properly now, IE, right, and then go ahead and run this now, then we do get the token back, right? So we do need to know what that is. That's a good thing. And then we can go ahead and copy this. So I'm going to copy this now, head back over to Postman, and we're going to use this now as the token. Just going to go like this, bearer space token, and let's go ahead and run our project in Visual Studio again. So I'm going to hit run. Okay, our API is up and running, and now if I go back over to Postman, and let's go ahead and send the request, and we see we get the results back, right? So everything's working as expected with the client ID, and that just basically adds another level of safety. So now let's go ahead and take a look at, like, let's say the client ID was wrong, right? So if I were to add a 1 in front of this, and then let's go ahead and run this. We go ahead and send this. We can see it's authorization denied because basically the client ID isn't matching with the token. So that's basically it. That's how you can use JWT in Power Apps portals to do some authenticating with third-party web APIs. Hope you guys found this useful. Enjoy.
So that's it, guys. If you like this video, don't forget to hit the like button, subscribe to my YouTube channel, and of course check out my blog at carldesouza.com. Thank you.